And welcome to our November 20th Board of School Trustees meeting. Before I begin the meeting, in which I will be doing every meeting, has everybody signed in that wants to speak? Has everybody signed in?
Here you go.
Good. Yeah.
Some may not want to. Some may not want
to. Never a dull moment. Yeah.
May we please face the flag and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I begin the roll call, I would like to introduce our new school board trustee, Mr. John Zulno.
Thank you.
Trustee Mamala,
Yes.
may I just make the announcement regarding, I know we're going to have a long meeting, and I just want to acknowledge the folks that went down to Indianapolis last night, and is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. All of the folks that went to Indianapolis yesterday for our teachers, you can either stand, wave your hand. I certainly appreciate you. Our president of the union, everybody please. Our Superintendent Miller, I watched him talk to as many representatives as he can. It is vital and important that we continue this movement for our teachers, because when they do better and have money, it trickles down to our kids. Thank you, Trustee Mamala.
No problem, Trustee King. Roll call. Trustee King.
Oh, we're here.
Trustee Zulno.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Present.
Trustee Candelaria.
Present.
And Trustee Mamala is also present. Let the record reflect that 5 trustees are present and the superintendent of schools. Item 2, financial presentation, Superintendent Miller.
At this time, I'd like to call Matt Reese to come to give the monthly update on the finances.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Members of the board, just a brief update on your monthly financial report that I believe is at your place through end of October. Through the end of October, the Education Fund has spent 77% of its expenses compared to an expected total of 84%. We're doing well in the Education Fund. However, that's going to change here in the upcoming months. All the transfers have been made as you've approved in previous resolutions up to the 15%. And you can see that there on the top right-hand side of that, how much we're supposed to transfer, and then how much we've actually transferred there is towards the bottom. With the referendum operating fund, you'll notice in this fund, we spend almost 94% of our appropriations through October. That doesn't bode well. You'll notice we've spent around $700,000 the last 2 months. That takes us to the point where in November, we are going to be out of appropriations in the referendum fund. Those expenses that should have been paid out of the referendum fund will be moved to the education fund or the operations fund as appropriate. You'll hear in just a second, we have a similar problem, but not nearly as drastic in the operations fund. So when that takes place, we'll actually move those operational expenditures into the referendum fund. Into the referendum fund, and we'll be moving some of those instructional expenditures up into the education fund. Referendum fund, as you know, can be used for any of those purposes where education and operations have their own specific uses. This is similar to what we did with the budget for 2020. We're just experiencing it now in 2019 as we're running out of appropriations as we get toward the end of our year. Any questions on that? Excellent. Your pages coming up on pages 3 and 4 both go through the debt service funds we have. There's been very little activity to no activity in those 2 funds, those 4 funds through the month of October. And last is the operations fund, which you'll notice this is where we approved the $8 million additional appropriation a few months ago. That's been included in the report. And you can see through that we're just barely overexpended, 86% compared to 84%. This is where we're going to run over by about $200,000. So not terrible in that fund. The one thing I can tell you, by moving these expenses as we get to the end of the year into the appropriate funds, we will finish with all of our funds in the black in 2019. Not much, but some in 2019. We will intend to hold over about $300,000 to $500,000 in bills is what we're anticipating, probably utility bills, into 2020. That's the current financial situation that we're in, given where we're at today. Any questions on the financial report tonight?
Mr. Reese, so based on your last statement, you're not recommending that we do what was done in the prior years, not pay our bills just to be in the black?
Well, the couple issues are coming up, and mainly it's not enough appropriation. We actually have the cash to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. We don't have the authority to spend the money. And that's given to us by, well, you, the board, and then ultimately by the DLGF down in Indianapolis. We've not made the additional appropriation request to get that done. Expenses came in a bit higher in the last couple months than we were anticipating.
Mr. Reese, so what could we do differently going forward? Or is there anything we could do differently going forward?
Well, I think we took the first step when we completed the budget this year. We've got a pretty accurate reflection of the expenses as we know them now going into the 2020 budget. The 2019 budget, just a reminder for everybody, this is the first year with this new fund structure. So before we didn't have education operations, we had general fund, you also had capital projects, bus replacement, transportation. Those have all been meshed around. Mm-hmm. And so the budgeting from, as done in August of 18 for the 2019 budget that we're now just wrapping up, was unknown at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Great, thank you.
Trustee Muller.
Yes, Trustee King.
Mr. Miller, moving forward with these kinds of reporting, I just completed a webinar training on financing from the Indiana School Board Association, and they provided documents and forms for reporting such as this that was simpler for the public to understand as well as the board. Moving forward, when we have our board retreat, can we talk about some of that reporting that would be much simpler? I mean, it was on the screen, again, the size. I don't know how many folks can actually saw that or even could follow what Mr. Reese was saying. So moving forward, I would hope when we have our board retreat, we can talk about a more friendly way of doing our reporting for the public could understand.
Madam President?
Yes.
Quick question for Superintendent Miller. That is on the public side of board docs as well, the financial report?
Yes, these reports are on the public side as well.
Okay, so if anybody wanted to go back and pull those, they...
Look at their phone and pinch and zoom, all of that. Yeah.
Very
Again, that's not my point. Even the font is still small, if you've ever went on the website and actually saw it, Trustee Miller. And again, reporting is not as clear as it could be. That's my point, according to the training that I completed this week, Indiana School Board Association webinar. That's my point. I know anybody can go on the website and see anything. I'm trying to get reports that are more user-friendly for our taxpayers, as simple as that.
Trustee King, you did say you have some templates or things like that you could share with the
Yes,
board?
I can certainly do that.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Trustee King.
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, this brings us to our third item, public expression for spin period.
Before you call, can I?
Oh, sure, Trustee Miller.
All right, Superintendent. So we're getting to the public expression first period here, and I know that we have several people who've signed up, and I'm sure they want to talk about the proposal to consolidate schools, which is on the new business for tonight. And I just want to do a quick review with everyone to what's brought us here. Most of you know that, or likely know that I went in front of the Gavitt and the Clark communities and listened and gave responses where I could to a lot of the concerns of the communities. And there are multiple things, as I said in my original presentation, that bring us to this moment. One of them is the naming of the new school and avoiding change work orders. But another big one is the financial situation that we're in. And I'm going to have Mr. Reese describe it a little bit more to you before we begin. But the financial situation is legitimate. We were contacted in September by the state that our 17-18 financials had triggered essentially red flags that we were not in a good place. And there are some of the trustees and myself, Mr. Reese, we had to go down and essentially have a plan for them in place as to how we were going to become financially solvent as to avoid state takeover. And that we did, and we did present them the proposals that I presented to the public. And they are waiting to see what the resolution is of the board for this situation. And you may say, why didn't I say this from the very beginning in this much detail? That was the advice given because they were private meetings. But at this point, with as much feedback and questions that we've had on things, I do think that you need to know that that is a legitimate thing that's happened here. And if you've listened to some of the things I've said at the community meetings, I have said I want to avoid state takeover. I don't want to become a school system where a for-profit company is coming in and making decisions for us. I think the people that you have here earnestly desire to make the best decisions on this board and myself for the kids in Hammond. And when you get in a position of state takeover, that is not necessarily what happens. And you can look at Muncie and you can look at Gary and you can see the results of those type of scenarios. And I earnestly desire, as your superintendent, to avoid that at all costs. So, Matt, did you want to come up and give some of the challenges we're facing?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. So just a brief update, and I believe all this was said at the meeting announcing the proposal, but I want to just go through it because it is very important. So the projections based on the current funding formula for calendar year 2021 and 2022 show that we're anticipating losing $2 million in each of those years. Not $2 million over the 2 years, but $2 million each year. We'll be going from $95 million down to $93 million in 2021, and then in 2022 we go down to $91 million. That's what the projections are showing currently. That's in the education fund. Another cause for concern is also in 2024. A big piece of what allows us to be operational in 2020 is the protected taxes law that was passed this last legislative session. It allows us to spread the circuit breaker losses, which for the school city of Hammond are going to go from at this point around $3 million up to estimated over $8 million. However, because the protected taxes law allows us to spread that circuit breaker loss over all of our funds instead of just the operation fund. The protected taxes is a key piece of legislation that allows us to get through 2024. The problem is in 2024, it has a sunset provision in that legislation. Therefore, in 2024, you'll be facing a $5.1 estimated million loss in the operations fund. So $2 million in 2021, another $2 million in 2022, and then the loss of protected taxes, assuming the legislation doesn't change, but it does have written into the current one a sunset provision in 2024. That could be $5.1 million. In 2025 will be the year that you will no longer have the operating referendum unless you choose to go out for it again. It expires in 2024. That's the time period you have, is a 7-year period starting in 2018 through 2024 is how long you have to operate that referendum until it ends at December 31 of 2024. Your choice at that point is either to go out for another referendum, the same referendum ideally with the same amount of money, or more, less. You could always make that choice at that point. If you choose not to do the referendum, or if it were to lose, you'd be looking at about $12.5 million of expenses you'd have to find something to do with. That would either mean without the passing of the referendum to generate that income again, you'd be forced to make $12.5 million worth of cuts in 2025. I'm not here tonight advocating for or against the referendum, simply giving you the facts on when that referendum ends. So 2024 is the end of the protected taxes, that's $5.1 million. 2025 is the end of the referendum, and that's $12.5 million in 2025. Any questions on that?
And with the estimated approximately $1 million from Proposal 1 or up to $1.5 million, Matt? I'm sorry. Or $1.5 million if we also combine Morton and Close Scott. Where would that put us if we were only saving $1.5 million?
Well, the problem's going to be you're going to lose $2 million in 2021. So if you just do Proposal 1, that would eliminate really not quite in 21, but I don't want to get into the cash flows of that, but about $1 million. And then you'd have to eliminate another $2 million in 2022. Just do the loss enrollment. Now, all these are estimates and can change based on what happens with enrollment, legislation, the referendum, if it were to pass again at the same level. All these are estimates. I'm simply laying out what the possibilities are. But Proposal 1 does not solve your problem by any means.
Does any of the trustees have any questions?
Thank you.
Well, for purpose of, the actually board we met with was the Distress Unit Appeals Board. And I was fortunate or unfortunate to be one of the trustees that attended both the meetings. We are in dire straits, and that's what I gleaned from both meetings. So, just to be transparent.
And I also attended the Distress Unit Board meeting down at Indianapolis, and yes, we are. Yes, we are. Excuse me. Item number 3, public expression, first period. First community member, Greg Erminger. Welcome. And you have 3 minutes.
Superintendent Miller, school board members, we come here today thinking we need to make a decision that will affect thousands of kids and parents and the residents and taxpayers of the city. A decision that cannot be made today. We cannot make a decision in 8 days from finding out of the proposals. We cannot have a board member do an honest vote within 4 days of learning of the proposals. It wasn't just promotional items that stayed in middle school and high school. It was a letter written by Superintendent Watkins and President White that stayed in middle school and high school. It was stated in over 8 months of construction and board reports that it was in middle school and high school. The proposal has a lot of holes and unanswered questions, and it should not be voted on today. There was people there at Gavitt from 2 different school districts, and there's 3 people at Clark from 3 different school districts. Their plans are being made by a decision that's going to come about with these proposals. So whatever the financial guy said about lost money and going down, you already lost $525,000 in 6 days with people leaving the schools. So what do you think that's going to add up come 2021 when this proposal could happen? It's going to lose a lot more money that's not even in the 500 students that's anticipated by 2028. This decision needs to be taken seriously, and time needs to be devoted to it. Superintendent Miller, school board members, I hope you take what was said at Clark and Gavitt seriously, because the future lies on this. I do want to say I appreciate you guys coming to Clark on Monday, and I hope you guys make the right decision. And again, this was the thing that sold us to give our tax money and have our taxes raised is for this decision. And many people said it at Gavitt, and many people said it at Clark. You will need a referendum because there's so much more money out there that needs to be fixed, and you won't get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ellen Slasek.
Mary Ellen Slasek, 517 Lewis. I'm still talking a little funny. I had major oral surgery last Tuesday, and I got bolts and screws and everything in my mouth right now, so I'm probably going to sound funny. We're in an unfortunate situation, and it breaks my heart. I think that people didn't have the information they needed when a lot of decisions were made to have the referendums, that things were not evident as to how bad they were, and because of what didn't happen, which would have been honesty and really putting it out in the open, a lot of people are suffering. My oldest daughter, Mary, who's with me tonight, went to Clark. I went to Hammond High, and 2 of my daughters went to Hammond High. Of course, Hammond High is going to be no more in about a year and a half. And Clark is probably going to be no more after tonight. We're all between a rock and a hard place. I know the state's going to take over. They're probably waiting outside the doors right now to see what happens tonight. And I don't think this is the end of it. Unfortunately, some really rough decisions got to be made, and a lot of people are going to be so hurt. But there's no other choice. What was done was done. What should have been done was not. And honestly, it's not the people up here that are at fault. It's the ones that have left. People knew what were going on, but not these people up here. You got a lot of new people up here. They're not at fault. They're stuck with this. It's not their fault. I don't stand for people lightly, okay? And I tell it like I see it. They're stuck. We're stuck. We're stuck because of what happened before or didn't happen before. We're going to have a mass exodus of students. I checked the MLS listings. A lot of houses going up for sale, especially around Gavitt. And from what I've been hearing, a lot of people are very unhappy, and they might go private with their kids or homeschool them or whatever. And it's just a big disruption, but it's nobody's fault that's here today. And that's for sure. It's the ones that have left that caused all this chaos that we are experiencing now. It's a shame that this is what's happening to our kids. I've got 3 grandchildren in Wallace, and one more will be maybe 3 years. The youngest one will be going to Wallace too, if Wallace is still there, because I think this is just the beginning. I can see in the future at least a couple more schools going to have to close. And it's going to hurt everybody, but it's because of the actions and inactions of the past is why it's happening. But it's still an awful thing.
Thank you. Next community member, Jeff Spittler.
The financial officer that was up here said, I couldn't understand a lot of the things, a lot of the money. I know it's a lot of money and everything, and it's confusing to a lot of people. But he did say one thing that was interesting to me. It was underestimated how much they were going to need. Okay? Well, I keep hearing all these projections about the population here in Hammond and how we have an exodus of students and we have less students. We have, you know, things like that are ebb and flow. Okay? I believe this community is a great community, and I believe in thinking positive about it. I don't like this doomsday bull. I'm tired of hearing that. We need to be creative, and we need to be positive. There's a lot of good things that are going on in this city that are going to bring jobs, and they're going to bring homes, and people are going to stay there. And it's not just going to be single people. There's going to be people that are going to have kids. And if you just have 2 schools, they're at max capacity, they can't fit in. What are you going to do with those other kids? Are you going to start a second shift? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We need to give the kids an opportunity in this community. On a closing note here, there's all this talk about a new mascot, okay, for the new school, okay? What about the kids who are going to be forced to go to a different school, all right? Are they going to have a new mascot? Is Morton going to change its name? Are they not going to be the Governors anymore? Is it not going to be called Morton anymore? Maybe it shouldn't. None of this stuff was taken into consideration, none of it. All these decisions are being made and hastily being made. You can't convince me that there's not more time to talk about stuff. And you know what? We can stop the state. We can stop the state because we go right to the press. And we tell them what they're doing to this community in here. Okay? We're Title I schools. We need to be protected. You need to protect us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next community member, Jan and Kapishki.
Jan Kapishki, 7045 Birch Avenue, 22-year member of the Hammond community. I urge you tonight to table the decision on these proposals. You do not have enough time. You have not made enough time to make this decision tonight. Both of your proposals are lousy. We know they're not going to save enough money. And we know that there will be anger in this community, and we will not go back and fight for another referendum for you in 2024 if you make either of these decisions tonight. Each and every day in our classrooms, you expect our teachers to ask what are called hot questions. That means higher order thinking. And yet this board cannot put higher order thinking into practice for itself. Higher order thinking means that you are evaluating, you are analyzing, and you are synthesizing, and you are teaching at the top of Bloom's taxonomy every single day. I'll tell you, as a teacher, that's really hard to do. A mountaineer does not climb Everest every day to the summit. They have to acclimate first. You cannot teach kids at the top of Bloom's taxonomy. You cannot ask those hot questions until they get 2 + 2 is 4. They have to have the base of that knowledge first. You need to go back to the table, come back to us with a proposal C that does not include closing 2 of our high schools. As Mr. Spittler said, you have no room for growth. Population ebbs and flows. It goes up, it goes down. And the fact that you're using data from 1969 at the end of the baby boom as your comparison for today's enrollment is ridiculous. If I had a student who came to me with a speech, when they were doing their persuasive speeches, I would have said, go back and get me more relevant data. You have a census coming up in 2 months that's going to give you different data than what you may be working off of from 2010. You have 20,000 teachers who just hit Indianapolis yesterday to talk to our legislators and stand up for their rights to be funded. You don't know what's going to happen in this legislative session. It started yesterday. We have to wait and make a decision based on new data, not on what you're feeding us. I went out and lied to my neighbors 2 years ago when you asked us to fight for a referendum for you. I won't do it again because I don't trust this board. No, Dr. Miller, I do not have faith in this board right now because the things that you told us 2 years ago when you threatened Gavitt with closure, right after they'd met the achievement gap change, when they'd met that goal, and I stood at this podium and I said, why, oh why would you destroy Gavitt, destroy the relationships between teachers and parents and community, rip that apart and not use it instead as a model for Hammond High School and Eggers to merge? Lo and behold, that becomes the proposal. You need to go back to the table and come up with a different plan because these two do not work. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Kopicki.
Brian Kopicki, resident of 7045 Birch as well. One of my favorite sayings is, there are infinite solutions to any problem, but 90% of them are awful. Unfortunately, this is what we see here tonight. You have told us that we were lying about the proposal, but I have a flash drive that says otherwise from information gathered from your Twitter feed. Let us think about this proposal with Gavitt. If this goes through and we close Gavitt, you are going to see the jitteriest of day one jitters. And I understand, it's a school. We should expect that. Let's say it sorts itself out in a week. You are still going to see issues that will cause ripple effects that will be seen for years, if not decades, if we're lucky to survive that long. Day one, you will see bus drivers going down roads they've never gone down because kids didn't need to get bused before. Let's say we can buy infinite buses and infinite drivers, and gas is somehow not a problem, even though it very much so is. There is one final problem that you're not even considering: time. The one thing you can't buy that is both the friend and enemy to all of mankind. These kids get to school 10 minutes late, hypothetically. They are 10 minutes late for instruction, meaning they have lost 10 potential minutes of learning. The buses are then 10 minutes late picking up the elementary school kids, most of which are under the age of 12 and cannot be expected to walk to and from school. Those kids are then also 10 minutes late to getting into school and do worse and the cycle continues into high school. Now, this 10-minute problem also applies to the bus drivers because they're driving through traffic on roads they've never seen, through other bus drivers driving through traffic and roads they've never seen, and they've got a stress problem. Now they're going to do one of two things. Strike, great, that's what we need, less bus drivers for our buses, or they're going to demand more money. Yeah, that's going to help our financial problems a lot. Let's give more money away. From there, you're also refueling the buses at least twice as much. You have doubled your costs just on busing alone. Now, is this a good idea? No, absolutely not. Are there better ones? Yes. Let's make a plan that, much like a Coinstar machine, makes sense.
Thank you. Next community member, Summer Salazar.
Good evening. My name's Summer Salazar. My son is a freshman at Clark currently. I spoke at the Clark meeting, so I'm not going to repeat what I had said there, but I do want to read you something because Mr. Miller did admit that you did not do the research on how school closings affect students academically. So in Milwaukee, for instance, the high school closure caused steep declines in high school graduation and college enrollments. This was a study that was done after they closed 2 high schools in Milwaukee and merged them into one. A recent Chicago study focused on highly controversial rounds of nearly 50 school closures in 2013 that showed the effects students had lower math scores even 4 years after the closure. There was no clear effect on suspension or any of that. In North Carolina, they did have discipline problems when they merged their 2 high schools into one. And it carried on for 3 years. This is going to happen to my son as a junior. This is going to happen to juniors and seniors in both schools, Gavitt, Morton, the new school, Hammond, whatever you want to say. And we don't have 3 to 5 years for you to get that straight with these kids. So I just think that the vote needs to be tabled because more research has to be done how academically and discipline affects these kids when you take them and uproot them this way. The last thing that I have to say too is that I did mention too, and I did say that, you know, you may not be that type of person who, when this does not work, if it does not work, that you can just resign and go. We live here. Our students attend these schools. You may have grandchildren, you may have children, you may not, who attend these schools. So you have really not big skin in the game, except it is your job, but you can always find another one. And I hate to say it, when you left, President, in the middle of the meeting at Clark in a huff, that just proved the point that if it gets too hot, you don't want to have to handle it. And that's going to be a problem here.
Thank you.
I think there was some more on the second page for the first period.
Next community member, Rosita. Rosita, next community member. Okay, she may have stepped out, she may return. Next community member, Joan Calvo.
Oh, Joan.
Good evening. My name is Joan Calvo. I live at 7231 Belmont. I'm a Hammond graduate, a Hammond homeowner, and have 3 children, the oldest 2 of whom are currently attending Jefferson Elementary. I've been very outspoken in support of public education, including actively campaigning for the Hammond referendum in 2017. I'm here tonight to ask that as my school trustees, you delay the superintendent's request for a vote on his proposed plans for consolidation. I'm not asking this simply out of my desire to maintain a status quo, but because I do not believe his proposal is complete. I'm going to stop actually right there because as Mr. Miller has now added new information, that kind of changes my direction. Specifically, Mr. Miller dropping this new information kind of speaks to one thing that I wanted to point out very specifically. Once again, the information has changed. Mr. Miller presented a plan for Gavitt that included Purdue buying the property. It became very clear very quickly that Purdue is not actually buying the property. Purdue might buy the property. Purdue is open to the thought of buying the property. Purdue wants to discuss buying the property, but Purdue is not buying the property. So much like how now we find out that it has nothing to do with mascots and colors, now it's more about, well, we are in desperate financial need. We are once again being told information after the fact. Very similar to how the referendum materials and the ballot did not match, something that has been repeatedly pointed out to us over and over again over the last week, basically telling us that because we didn't read the fine print, now we're being sold a whole new bill of goods. The audio and the visual don't match on this proposal, a proposal that hasn't even been adopted yet. This has led to tremendous sense of distrust between the community and the school city leadership. As our trustees, we have elected you to advocate on behalf of our children as students, but also on behalf of our community as taxpayers. We now know that 3 elementary schools closed this summer are being held as storage facilities. How many unused school buildings are we going to have in our community? We are all being asked to be considerate of the financial health of the school corporation without any consideration for our own financial investments, our property. As another speaker has already stated, we live here. We have our own considerations for our tax dollars, our property, just as much as the school corporation does, and we are being given this proposal in 8 days, with new information coming out every single day. My request to my trustees is that these proposals be re-examined for viability for our students and our community. If they don't work, request a new proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Murphy?
Cindy Murphy, 6838 Colorado. As Mr. Miller said, one of the reasons for the vote tonight is the Phase 2 coming up, which is the naming of the new high school and the mascots. There's so many people out there upset about that. They're just like, fine, just name it Hammond High or Hammond Central. Again, trustees, take away this time constraint that's pushing this vote today. It should have been last month, but a trustee had to leave town and go move somewhere else, and now we're here up against the wall and doing this. Let everybody name the school, pick the mascot. Now, going into the next thing. The demography study, I heard we're going to go and have it done again. I just thought that was a really unfortunate thing to do because we've already had it once, and it's like, we don't like the numbers, we think they should be redone. Well, fine, have it redone. Let's talk to the city this time. That was one of the problems with the visioning committee. We couldn't keep anybody from the city on the visioning committee to get us the information we need so we can work together. We have heard testimony at the couple of the public meetings saying that all these new housing starts, they're taking vacant buildings and they're putting them back on the market, they're being flipped, they're being sold. Contemporaneously with this meeting, Jeff Speck is going to be unveiling his new downtown plan. Just down the street here, they're talking about putting 200 units in. And the reason, and they talked about this a couple years ago, this is prime land to be turned into housing for the people who work at St. Margaret's. So they're looking at that too. 200 units. How many children is that going to bring in here? The other thing I wanted to talk to you about tabling this, do not repeat the mistakes of 2017. As soon as we started talking about the referendum, I said, where's the facility study? Where's the strategic plan? Those should have driven the referendum. They didn't. Now we've got the cart before the horse again. You are about to embark on a plan that's going to tear this city apart, and you don't have an updated facility plan. You've got buildings that have been taken off. You've got buildings that have been in the fix. Gavitt was in the middle of a $6.3 million renovation at the time of the facility study. You need to knock off the things that are already fixed. Gavitt should be much higher up on the list right now on buildings that need improvement, not lower on the list where it currently is. It doesn't belong there. It's in much better shape than Morton High School for needs of repair. Strategic plan. We still don't know where we're going. So don't repeat those mistakes. You have the time to go do those two things, make an informed decision, get the community involved in this, and so we can get something. You may decide to do the same thing, but at least you've involved the community in it. Take the time you need. State Board of Accounts and DUAB, they want to know what's going to happen in 2021. If you wait till June, you can still give it to them. Don't make the decision tonight. Please table it.
Thank you. Kathy Shannon?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't have much more to say because I think the fellow speakers have already said quite a lot. But I do feel the residents, the property owners, the parents have been scammed. I will, at the end of this, with this referendum, I didn't trust it when they passed it. And what's happening right now is proof that we shouldn't, as property owners, have trusted it. Over this one referendum, I myself will pay over $5,000 more for the schools, of which I have no children in at the present time. Currently, the property values have raised well, I don't even know when they started, but they've gone up about 8% in my area. Why? Because the schools have gotten better. And with that, I believe, and with what was said at the meeting at Clark, you're not leaving room for growth. You're leaving it at a decline, and shame on all of you. You've got to give us a chance. People don't move into an area to bus their children. I'm sure we use Cherville and St. John and places like that. I've had grandchildren that have lived in Cherville that were bused, but it's totally different than Hammond. People aren't moving to Robertsdale. They aren't moving so that they have to bus their children so far. And it was stated that they would provide buses for these children for after extracurriculum. Where's the buses now? Parents are transporting. Buses used to be, but they were taken away. So I hope they do give this a chance. I hope they do go out there and re-look into not going on that our children are going to decrease in the schools, because I actually feel there's going to be an influx of children because there are young adults buying these homes now. My next door neighbor paid over, they're young. They're not old people. We've got a new birth. And I feel what you're doing right now with the plan, you're driving us to become a Gary charter school. We're being driven to that. Please don't drive us to that. And I thank you all.
Thank you. Again, I will go back to the first community member if you stepped out and came back. Rosita? Rosita? Okay. All right. Item number 4, unfinished business.
Trustee Mamalo.
Trustee King.
Thank you. I have one request of the board that we revisit this construction manager's contract, because after reviewing the tape and listening and actually reading the entire contract, I think we need to revisit that contract and have some discussion. You know, I know it was voted on, but we still can discuss it. So I'm asking for, at our December 3rd meeting, that contract be on the agenda for discussion. They'll be here anyway. Basically, I'm trying to prevent us from going down the same rabbit hole, obviously, we've done over a period of years. If we can't revisit a contract that, in my opinion, needs questioning, we're just about to do the same thing over and over again.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Why would it require a motion?
To revisit the contract, because a motion and it was already passed.
I'm saying revisit the contract. I'm not saying overturn the vote. We need to revisit that contract, period. It's a request from a board member. Obviously, I've read some things you all haven't. And why wouldn't you honor that?
No, I'm not saying not to honor.
Well, you're trying to put it to a vote, and we know what happens when I make a request and you put it to a vote.
Well, we could revisit it. That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 5, approval of minutes of our November 6th, 2019 school board meeting. Trustees, you received in your board docs the minutes of our November 6th, 2019 school board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes from the November 6, 2019 board meeting as presented.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The minutes of the November 6, 2019 school board meeting has been approved.
Trustee Mamalo, could you put me down as abstaining from that vote?
Sure.
since I was not a member of the board at the time.
Sure. Barb? Okay. No problem.
Thank you.
Item number 6.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the consent agenda tonight, items A through C as presented.
Trustees, you have been given the information on the items A, B, and C. Do I have a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the consent agenda, items A, B, and C, as presented.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Question.
Trustee King.
I have questions regarding our accounts payables. Again, we had to review over 182 pages of documents, and I'm pulling it up now. Give me a second here, please. Well. Oh, that's not it. Well, as it's coming up, again, for future references, a lot of the vendors, you know what it is based on. But there are some vendors, based on its title, you don't know what kind of service they're actually providing. And we've talked about this, and I'm just asking, we're going into a new year, so that I can understand and we can communicate this information better, if we can find a better way of identifying these vendors and what they actually offer. Mr. Miller.
So I did talk to the software provider, and there's no easy way to fit all that on the report. I really think the best way is if you have questions about individual vendors, submit them to me in advance. I'd be happy to get a description of what the vendor does.
So that's the only way we can fix it.
They didn't have a solution for me to fix it
Okay.
as far as in the report.
Well, we have now, between now and January 1st, maybe they can come up with something, hopefully. Well, if it means me having to ask and point out every vendor, I will. But for the record, I would like to read into the record that this accounts payable docket register indicated that on November 20th, we had over 180 pages of documents to read, and our claims totaled $1,826,962.96. And our payroll is $3,128,004.96. I'm asking, as we move forward, that these numbers be part of our minutes, so that rather than having to go through our board docs as a reminder, we can actually see them in our minutes. It's easier to pull up as a reference. So do we require a motion to be passed to have that done?
No, we can.
Okay, fine.
Sure.
Thank you very
So
much.
just to clarify, if we just copied and pasted the contents of
Just-
this document into the minutes?
Into the minutes.
That'd be fine?
Yeah, and the dollar amount, and it should be read into record so our taxpayers can see actually what we're spending approximately twice a month. Every school board meeting, these dollars come to this amount. Thank you. And there was one vendor. Oh boy, I did not bring those notes. Well, just moving forward, I left my notes on my kitchen table regarding the vendors that I did have in question, but we could always, even though we pass this tonight. If I have questions regarding tonight's vendors, I can certainly bring it up. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 7.
You didn't vote. Yeah,
I'm
call for a
sorry.
vote. Yeah.
I'm ahead of myself. There was a motion and a second for items A through C. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Items A through C have been passed. Item number 7, new business.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of item A, the listing of donations as presented in board docs.
Item A, trustees, is there a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Candelaria.
I would like to make a motion for board approval of donations as presented.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Board approval of donations has been approved. Item B.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the extracurricular purchases as presented in board docs.
I second.
I have to make a motion.
I have to make a
I'm
motion.
sorry, I apologize.
Is there a motion?
Make the motion.
Go ahead, John.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement. This is with Lincoln and Theater at the Center.
It's the, no, item B, the
Item B.
Extracurricular.
Mr. Zulum.
Extracurricular purchases. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the extracurricular purposes.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Board approval of extracurricular purchases has been approved. Item C.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the contract between the Transportation Department and West Matic Corporation. The actual amount is $1,675. When I reviewed it, I didn't see it actually in there, but $1,675 to service the bus washing equipment that was installed a few years back.
Is this monthly, yearly?
It's a one-time annual fee,
It's 12.
Annual?
12-month.
12 month.
Mr. Miller, Trustee Mallow.
Yes.
Question. The signature on the contract, it says, wait a minute. Office manager. Who is that person?
I'm looking. On page 4, it says service purchaser. It says signature, print name, and title, or are you looking someplace else?
The top sheet is signed by an office manager. I don't recognize that person in that department. I know who the office manager is, but it doesn't appear to be this person.
That's a good question. I can't read the last name signature either. I will say, though, that the signature for the principal administrator, that would be Mr. Potes, and he was waiting for board approval before he signed anything.
Well, in the future, could you just still give me the person who signed this document?
I'd be happy to. This is a good example, though. If it was sent in advance, I could have this.
Item C. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the contract between Transportation and West Mac Corporation as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Approval of contract between Transportation and West Matic Corporation has been approved. Item D.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the agreement between Lincoln Elementary and Theater at the Center for performing arts for the 4th and 5th grade field trip to see Camp Wonderland.
Do I have a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee King.
I move that we approve the approval of the agreement between Lincoln Elementary School and the Theater at the Center.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any discussion? I'm sorry. There's been a motion, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And I think this is a really neat thing. Really neat. Item E.
Trustees, for item E, the approval of Parent Square new communication system, I'd like to invite Jeremy Tignor from Parent Square to come up and do a brief presentation. This, just not to steal any of his thunder, but this was, one of the call-outs we had when we had the possible threat of school violence at Hammond High was we didn't have a very strong way to send text messages and instant messages to parents and family. And so we immediately got on that, and this is the result of that process, is our recommendation to adopt Parent Square. And Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and show us what it's about?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Miller. My name's Jeremy Tigner. I'm thrilled to be in front of everyone here, and thank you for everyone for coming out.
To the
Parent
mic,
Square
sir.
is an organization.
Closer to the mic.
Closer to the mic or hold it.
Take it
or
off if you want.
take
You
it
got
off.
it. All right, try this. I'll just lean in. Since 2005, I've dedicated my career to help school leaders communicate more effectively. And when we think back to just 2005, 14 years ago roughly, back in those days, social media was something for college kids. Text messaging was something that teenage kids would do. Smartphones was something for the wealthy, or before they even existed. You flash forward to 2019, and none of those things are true anymore. The world's changed. So what we want to do is we want to help solve a fundamental challenge. Right now, within our district and our classroom and our campuses and classrooms, we use a number of different tools. We have an alert system. We use newslettering tools for putting out newsletters. Our classroom teachers have adopted their own sets of tools like Remind, Class Dojo, Seesaw. After-school activities, we have a number of other systems that are being used to communicate different things. And what that's done is it's created this disjointed communication where parents kind of have to pat their heads and rub their tummies to know where to go for what bits of information. When we think about the challenge that district administrators have, and I think we can all attest to this, is that we have amazing stories and amazing things that are going on in the school city of Hammond, but we're trying to communicate that right now through several different communication systems. So we lose a little bit of our brand and the ability to tell this amazing story about what's happening in those classrooms. And also to be able to attract students from other areas and to reinforce why parents need not go elsewhere for a quality education. Oversight becomes another challenge when we think about communication that's happening outside of our hemisphere. Also, we have a demographic of our school community that speaks a home language other than English, and not all of these different tools are made to meet the needs of our English language community. Certainly with parents, we feel a little overwhelmed when I have, when folks, being able to speak from first person as a father of two daughters. My daughter was a track and field athlete. My other daughter was involved in band and different things like that. And there was just different communication systems for those different things. So what Parent Square ultimately does is it collapses communication across the entire organization. So finally, parents have a single source of truth for all things, whether it's coming from the district office, the campus, in the classrooms, or in those after-school activities. It's going to help us ensure that we have two-way dialogue, not only with our principals, but our teachers, our coaches, so we have a single place to go for those different things. We synchronize with your student information system, PowerSchool. It's an API integration, not to get technical or anything like that, but it ensures that parent contact information is up to date, and we'll get into that just a little bit. The solution meets parents where they are. Parents Today's parents are on their smartphones, they're text messaging, they're on their, the mobile app becomes a big aspect to that. Email and text messaging, I believe I mentioned that already. In terms of things that the application will do for us is it'll help us collapse our forms and permission slips. So when it's time to provide permission for a child to go on a field trip, that can be done through this communication platform. Making parents aware of different events and being able to easily put that on their calendar. There's a whole host of other things that we do that we don't have time for tonight. We do integrate with the Student Information System PowerSchool. It does support single sign-on, so parents, if they're into PowerSchool, they can automatically log into Parent Square. And in terms, let me just back up for half a second. Parents do not have to log into a portal. They do not have to download an app, but if they do, they have all their communication in one spot. All communication will be delivered to them in their preferred method. However, there is a web experience and an app experience, so they have all their communication in one spot, from the district, campus, classroom, and all those after-school activities. And then lastly, for our English language community, folks who speak a different language in their home, and we have teachers who they're like me, they only speak one language, they can communicate in their native tongue. Parents who speak another language, they'll receive that in their preferred language. A parent would respond in their home language, and the teacher would receive it. Both parties know that the information's been translated. And to be able to just share a quick story, and I'll wrap up, I had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to do some professional development with the school, MSD Wayne Township, a greater Indianapolis area district. The ELL director came to me afterwards and was like, Jeremy, I just want to let you know that we have seen a 300% increase in our parent participation in our ELL program, and I've had parents pull me aside to tell me that they feel like they now feel like they're in the know because information's being brought to them in their home language. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has, but I'm just absolutely delighted to come here and share a little bit about Parent Square and what it'll do to help us build a more vibrant school community.
Just so the board understands, this would be replacing School Messenger, and this program can do everything School Messenger can do as far as still sending out a voice communication. But we can do district lists, we can have teachers have their own lists, we can do any kind of list that we want to send out targeted messaging to parents. So for example, at Morton, we had a fire alarm go off. It would have been very simple for us to as an administrator or Mr. Easton, just go on the app, say, you know, fire department's been here, everything is safe, hit send to all of the cell phone records we have on file. And the thing about the PowerSchool integration that's nice is if a parent notifies us that their number changes and someone goes in the system and changes the number, this is not a separate system. It will always use the exact data we have in our student information system. So it's always as updated as that is, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. New families register into your school community.
It is an annual subscription fee based on the number of students. It is essentially $3.50 per student. So the initial cost, they gave us a discount on it for the first year, would be $36,250. We would look to be live by the start of the next year, correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
And is this competitive?
Next school year, I mean like January.
Is this competitive? Have we reached out to any other vendors that can provide the similar service?
Well, that's just that there's not a lot out there that can provide this level of service. He used to work for one of the competitors, actually the solution we have now, School Messenger, and it doesn't have the ability to do the messaging, which to me is the biggest thing. Even if a parent doesn't install the app, they will still be able to get the text message. Mm-hmm. So if they do nothing, we're going to be able to communicate with them, especially if there's a crisis type situation. But it doesn't have to only be crisis situations. And the automatic translation, as it says up there, it's not just Spanish. It's got 100 different languages, so the parent can pick their language and it'll automatically do the translation through the Google Neural Engine, correct?
That is absolutely correct, yeah.
Yes. So to me, there's no competitor that has that support, and with our community and the number of languages that we know that are in this community, it's it was the only option. But yes, Mr. Benich and his department did evaluate everything that was in the marketplace.
Madam President?
Yes, Trustee Miller.
Just a comment. I think it's excellent that it integrates with our student management system and that that's a one-stop shop for updating and keeping records, and that database management can really be cumbersome. And so I think that's a great thing. In addition to the two-way translation, that's just awesome. That's very awesome. I'm excited about that.
So this replaces the dojo and all of that? Does it replace dojo?
Yeah, we would work with, well, let me say this. We're not going to force teachers, any teachers in the audience, we're not forcing you to give up your dojo right off the bat. Immediately, we would use this as a district-wide messaging system and give our administrators the ability to do that. What we've talked about is Jeremy or someone from the team coming out and doing training with teachers to teach them and show them the benefits of having a unified system that's integrated with PowerSchool. So that's a bigger part of the implementation, and that's included, the training.
That's correct, yes.
Yes, to come out and work with our teachers to implement that, but right off the bat, we would use it as a district messaging system.
My final question, you indicated that parent participation increases. So our paraprofessionals that are out here trying to get parents to participate in, all the activities, picking up report cards, so forth and so on, you're stating that your system will improve attendance of parents to attending these items.
I absolutely am. I can speak from my firsthand knowledge of working with many school systems that have implemented Parent Square, and just a whole bevy of stories. A library media technician who hosts many library events, book fairs, and things of that ilk. He shared his story as Jeremy, before we used Parent Square, I might have seen 1 or 2 parent volunteers to help me with this particular event. He said the last event that we had after I sent out a volunteer request through Parent Square, I had over 14 parent volunteers, and we were able to make a much more innovative and a more vibrant event.
One more question as well. It's not an opt-in system, correct? As far as the text messaging, it'll send to whatever records we have on file.
Correct.
Okay.
And it can even give us reports back for numbers that did not receive the messages, correct?
That is correct.
Yep.
Awesome.
So we could then take that listing and send a note home that, hey, we tried to send you a message, but the number did not work.
And if I may, every single week, not only will building administrators and any folks that are identified as system administrators, both at each building and at the district office, they'll get a weekly summary report, which will give them a sense of what communication looks like within their respective organization, so building level, district-wide. The number of direct messages, posts, alerts that have been sent, who their top authors are, and really what's most important is understanding our reach. So they'll have a direct link into identifying parent contact information or parents that we're not able to reach because of one of 3 factors. One is their record exists in PowerSchool, but they don't have a phone number or an email address associated with it. Also, it will report any parents where an email address is bounced and we know for sure that we are not able to communicate with that parent. And if any phone number, we get a response back from the telco that number is no longer in service, those individuals will show up. And just a little story about a district, this is wildly adopted in the greater Indianapolis area. Administrations have seen just an increased engagement through ensuring that all parents are a part of the conversation.
Wonderful, thank you.
Are there any more questions? Okay. I would like a motion for item E.
Madam President,
Trustee Candelaria.
I would like to make a motion for approval of Parent Square, a new communication system as presented.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Item E has been approved.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of item F, the MOU between Campania Academy and School City of Hammond. Essentially, Campania would be looking for, let me backtrack what the purpose of this MOU is. And it's one that we had to end when we closed enrollment a year and a half ago. It's one that we can do again, where Campania has agreements with different school corporations, but they don't have agreements with all the school corporations in the area. So if a student comes to Campania Academy and they need to enroll them in a school corporation, they will enroll them in the Hammond schools for Plato access. So that's essentially, they need a school of record for these students. Like I said, we had this relationship up until when we closed enrollment. They're talking maybe at most in a year's time, 10 to 15 students.
Is there a motion for item F?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I would like to make a motion for the approval of the Memorandum of Understanding between Campania Academy, Inc. and the School City of Hammond.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Quick discussion.
Trustee King.
Just one question. The students that participate, will they be coming on site to our schools, or will they be, can you explain that?
Sure. The Plato program is distance learning, so no, they will not be coming on site. All the instruction will be from an actual licensed teacher from Lake Central, actually, on site at Campania, but just some of the students reside in a different school district when they come to Campania, and they don't have a school district to enroll them in, so they would enroll them in Hammond.
Question, but so they're not necessarily Hammond students. It does fall under the open enrollment.
Yes, that's why why the agreement ended previously, was when the board closed enrollment a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So what's the difference? What is transpired that was different prior to this MOU?
Well, we reopened enrollment back in, was it June? I believe we announced this board approved opening enrollment again. And so Campania approached me and said, since it was open enrollment again, they would like to resume the relationship we had previously, hence the MOU.
Is there a motion for item F?
Wait, we have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. And we've had a second?
Yes.
Okay. There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Item F has been approved. Item G.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the contract with Fleck Education Services LLC with the Area Career Center. I'll speak briefly to the rationale behind this. When the federal government reauthorized the Carl Perkins Act, many times referred to as Perkins 5, one of the components of it is to do a comprehensive local needs assessment based on the criteria as described in Perkins 5. And what we're essentially using here is Fleck Education Services to conduct this community needs assessment. I do have a representative, Cynthia Frey, here in the audience if the board has any questions. But essentially they'll be assisting in doing most of the legwork to get the community needs assessment done for the Carl Perkins 5.
Is she here?
Is she here?
Yes.
Oh. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have anything to add to what the superintendent has said?
Perkins 5, the reason behind the comprehensive local needs assessment is because the legislation itself, and it is federal legislation, actually incorporated a few more pieces than we've seen previously in Perkins legislation. A big piece of that was it expanded the definition of their special populations, and most of the time when people think of special populations, they think of special education. It's much more broad than that, because that definition includes students who are academically and economically disadvantaged. It includes non-traditional students, and with the authorization of Perkins 5, it also includes additional categories like children of military families, homeless, and out of school youth. So it expanded it quite a bit. The other piece that went right along with the comprehensive local needs assessment was much more involvement from business and industry and the stakeholders that are involved in career and technical education. So along with the comprehensive needs assessment, it's not just the data gathering piece. It is a local stakeholders meeting that must happen so that the CTE district gets input from all stakeholders. And from that, it used to be that you wrote your local plan by simply gathering your board, your advisory board for your career center, identifying what activities you'd like to do, and then what budget went with that. Now that local plan will be developed from the needs and gaps identified at that stakeholder meeting with stakeholder input.
So one final question. In the event, after your assessment, you find that we need to hire additional folks to address the needs of these children, Mr. Miller, do we have that in our budget? Or is that a budgeted item, or as we move forward with that?
There is no budgeted item for the results of the comprehensive local needs assessment. I will say that it is an allowable expense to actually use Perkins money to pay for this support. So we are utilizing the Perkins funds to conduct this. We will have to see and evaluate what the results are when they come.
I understand, how it's being funded. I'm just saying, if the outcome of this assessment is that we need additional assistance to help these children, are we prepared for that?
So what the outcomes would likely look like are there gaps in the programming that we're offering at a career center? What are some of the needs of the employers? What are some of the feedback that parents are giving that they would like us to see? Adding CTE programs are one of the most affordable things to do because the state reimburses CTE programs. When Ms. Nicolau gave her school improvement plan, she touched on some of the programs we're already considering marketing and adding next year. So it will largely be dependent upon the results of the study.
Okay, so whatever the outcome is, we currently have the current staff that will be able to fulfill the assessment. We won't be looking to hire anyone else. That's basically my question.
It would just be if there's an area that we find there's a major gap, then we would sit, Ms. Nicolau, myself, the curriculum team, we would look and see if it's a gap that we can reasonably address and go from there, which could be adding an additional program. It could be a partnership with a local university, such as Ivy Tech or Purdue Northwest. We do have some options in how we would choose to address it at that point.
Basically, that was my concern. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Item G, is there a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I would like to make a motion for the approval of the contract with Fleck Education Services, LLC, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item G has been approved. Item H.
Trustees, I am recommending the adoption of the resolution to become a party in the lawsuit that was started by West Lafayette Community School Corporation versus Governor Eric Holcomb. That is addressing the state requirement that any vacant school property must be sold for $1 to an interested charter school. We're estimating, and this would also be in partnership with Lake Ridge Schools, who has already, their board has already approved this, and we would be splitting attorney fees to the amount of, that's estimated at $7,500.
The secretary will read the resolution.
intervention and cause number 79C01-1909-PL-000115, West Lafayette Community School Corporation versus Holcomb. Whereas School City of Hammond closed 3 public school buildings at the end of this last school year, including Columbia Elementary School, Lafayette Elementary School, and Miller School. And whereas Indiana Code Section 20-26-7-1 and 20-26-7.1 require the sale or lease of school property no longer in use for $1 to an interested charter school within a specified timeline not exceeding 45 days or not more than the minimum bid in accordance to Indiana Code 36-1-11 by interested accredited non-public schools or post-secondary educational institutions without voluntary approval or consent of the school City of Hammond. And whereas West Lafayette Community School Corporation filed an action against Eric Holcomb in his official capacity as governor of the state of Indiana, seeking declaratory judgment that the above is unconstitutional in violation of Article 1, Section 21 of the Indiana Constitution and the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, as well as injunctive relief. And whereas Indiana Trial 24B2 permits intervention in an action where an entity's claim and the main action have a question of law or fact in common. And whereas School City of Hammond is similarly situated to West Lafayette Community School Corporation due to its recent public school building closures, such that this statute could be used to result in charter schools purchasing or leasing this property for $1 or in non-public schools or post-secondary educational institutions purchasing this property for not more than the minimum bid in accordance with Indiana Code 36-1-11, resulting in the property being used or sold for well under fair market value without voluntary approval or consent of the school entity. And whereas taxpayers in the City of Hammond recently voted via referendum to locally raise taxes to better schools, thus to require forced sales or leases to charter schools, accredited non-public schools, and post-secondary educational institutions, would run directly against the voters' referendum decision. And whereas under Indiana Code 20-26-5-4A1, the governing body of a school corporation has the power to sue in matters permitted by applicable law, but may not use funds received from the state of Indiana to bring or join in an action against the state. And be it therefore resolved that the President and Secretary of the Board of School Trustees be and are hereby authorized to execute any and all documents necessary to proceed in the litigation as a intervener and as a party in said litigation or similar litigation challenging the constitutionality of Indiana Code 20-6-7.1 and Indiana Code 20-26-7-1. And be it further resolved that the President and Secretary of the Board of Trustees are authorized, together with the school superintendent and board legal counsel, to take any and all actions necessary to participate in said litigation, including the filing of motions, briefs, and other pleadings, the participation in related discovery, and the settlement or voluntary dismissal or withdrawal from the litigation. As the President and the Secretary of the School City of Hammond, with the advice of the superintendent and board, council may determine during the pendency of said litigation, and be it further resolved that the board hereby authorizes the payment of legal fees and costs for the participation in said litigation, so long as any funds for such payments do not come from state funding. Now therefore be it resolved that the School City of Hammond by and through its legal counsel shall intervene on the above mentioned cause number 79C01-1909-PL-000115, West Lafayette Community School Corporation versus Holcomb.
Thank you, Secretary Candelaria. What is the pleasure of the board? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve for adoption this resolution.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The adoption of the resolution has been passed. Item I.
Trustees, I'd like to thank everyone who came out and spoke today, and at the other high schools. And we will see what the board's decision is, and if they approve, we will do everything in our power to do what's best. But I am going to make the recommendation now. Trustees, I am recommending the approval of item I, the proposal number 2 to consolidate high schools.
Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I would like to make a motion for the approval of proposal number 2 for the consolidation of high schools.
Is there?
Proposed.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam President,
Trustee Candelaria.
may I please call for a roll call vote on this matter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Roll call vote. Trustee King.
Yes.
Trustee Zulo.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Candelaria.
Yes.
And Trustee Mamala, yes. It has been approved and passed.
Have fun when the financial grim reaper breaks down your door.
You're not getting any more money.
Better start looking for a job. You're not going to get done.
You're done. No more money. Are you going to join the BDs and the GDs together? Listen to the people. We got to get rid of this board. Got to get rid of. Make your voice count, man. These is going to be a gang war. Shame on you.
You just destroyed a community. You just destroyed a community.
And you're not going to have your $12 million for your next referendum, so figure that out.
We have to get a lawyer. That's what we need. We need a lawyer. Because you lied to us with the last referendum. We need to go to the city. Shame on you. Stand up to her.
Upcoming board meetings.
Item 8. Upcoming board meetings.
Trustees, it has been the tradition of the previous school board to only have one meeting in December. Whatever your pleasure, just letting you know that was the previous pattern of the previous boards. It doesn't have to be the first. That's why I had Barb put all the dates on there so you could see.
Trustee Mamalo.
Yes, Trustee King.
I will not be available on the 10th.
Okay. Trustee King will not be available on the 10th. Okay.
I will not be available on the 3rd, Trustee Mamala.
Okay, Mr. Sulzon will not be available on the 3rd. Okay, well, we don't want to meet on Christmas Eve. We don't want to meet on
You have the 17th.
New Year's Eve.
You have the 17th.
But we have the 17th. Okay? What's the pleasure of the board?
The 17th would be great.
The 17th? Okay. So, we will meet on Tuesday, December 17th at 6 p.m. Do you have that, Barb?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we are now, item 9, we are now to our second period of public expression. Mary Ellen Slasek. Okay.
Just trying to comfort my daughter, who went to Clark, and she was special education there. She has special needs. This is very hard on her. Of course, it's making me cry too. I'm mom, you know. This was a hard decision to make. Like I said earlier, it's not necessarily the people's fault that's here, present on the stage or behind the scenes working at 41 Williams. It is mostly the previous who caused all this, causing my daughter to cry, causing many people to lose their tempers. They felt they were lied to with referendum. I know I was given information that I had received that this was going to happen, but unfortunately, I was ignored or called a liar or a fearmonger, and it came to pass everything I said and other people said too, that things were not as they seemed. And like I say, I can't blame this board. You weren't part of this. There was others that were part of it. But everybody's suffering. Now, there's a, no, Molson over here, honestly, I'm not going to defend everybody, but really, they're really, look at the people that left. And look that way. And there's a few around here that I'm sure had maybe more knowledge than some of the others. But all I know is the referendum passed because everybody thought everything was well and good. We're going to have a new school. We're going to have money for more education. And they've been duped. They feel they've been used. And another referendum's never going to pass. People are going to vote all right. They're going to vote with their feet. Check the MLS listing, see how many houses got up for sale since this was made knowledgeable. It's increased quite a bit. Go check for yourself. Unfortunately, between a rock and a hard place, like I said earlier, but the state is waiting to take over. I know they are. This might not be a Band-Aid big enough for the big cut that's going on. It might not be. The state might take over the school city anyway. Do we want to become like Gary? No. We want to become like Muncie? No. But this is the way we're headed. And it's just a shame for our kids and for my grandkids, too.
Thank you. Second community member, Rosita. Third community member, Sharita Nesbitt. Fourth community member, Crystal Moore. Next community member, Cindy Murphy.
Cindy Murphy, 6838 Colorado. I'm going to comment on the quest for the financial reports to be made more simpler. There is a very good reason why they are so chock full of information. The financial consultant that was brought in last year actually made some of those suggestions to make them more apparent to the public, especially the appropriations on there. So please do not simplify it unless you keep the old reports. There's some of us that don't have any problems reading those reports, whatever. They're chock full of information that was not provided to the public before. I hope that you keep the current financial reports, and if you want to simplify it for the people who want it shortened up, go ahead and do so, but don't change that. Going back to the referendum, there was one thing that I was promised during the referendum to get me on board, and is that the new high school was going to be a STEAM school. And not a word about that. And as Ms. Carletta Blake King has asked about it, she took over for me on that one. I will be back. It's like the track. We promised a lot of people it was going to be a STEAM school. We were going to have the Performing Arts Academy. We were going to have a premier STEAM school that everybody was going to be looking at to us doing better than anything else. Then we were going to have Gavitt, which was the AP capital of Hammond, and the advanced manufacturing up at Clark. Well, I hope we keep that STEAM school. We take the advanced manufacturing from Clark, we put it in. It needs to be a STEAM school. You got to take care of us nerds out there. This is something we fought for. We don't get up that often, but it's something we need to keep going. Thank you.
Trustee Mamala.
Trustee King.
To answer that question regarding the STEAM, we are on top of that. Mr. Miller has prepared, we probably would have been on the agenda tonight, but considering the fact we knew we had a full agenda already, I believe we're going to put it on our next December 3rd agenda. I'm very excited about the plan. I've read it, as the other board members have, I'm sure, and it will be a STEM school. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee King. Next community member, Greg Erminger. Erminger.
First of all, I want to say it's an embarrassment that you guys made that decision today and didn't table it as the residents requested. It was not enough time. This is some dirty politics going on. Behind the table deals. You guys should all be embarrassed. And I disagree with the lady saying you guys are new board members. President Mamala, you've been on the board. You've been here.
Yeah.
And part of this reason we're here today, because of the dumb decisions that the past board made. We have put $5 million into Hammond High and $8 million into Gavitt. That's $13 million that's going to be boosh in a year. How do we get that back? That's poor decision making. And the new board members, you didn't wake up and say, I want to be a board member. You knew what was going on. You knew the positions that you were taking. This is dirty politics and backdoor deals, and you guys should be ashamed of yourself. You're selling Clark High School for a piece of grass because we didn't plan the new school correctly. So other schools have to suffer because of poor decision making. You guys should all be ashamed of yourself, and board members, enjoy your time because it's going to be over.
Thank you.
Is there any on the second page?
No, we did that the
okay.
first time.
Okay, good.
Okay, item 10, reports from superintendent.
Just reiterate what I said before the vote, that myself, this board, the entire leadership team will do everything possible to, well, you can't say what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do everything possible to make this as successful as possible for School City of Hammond. That's it.
Reports from board members.
Trustee Mamala.
Trustee King.
Let me be clear. I knew what I was taking on when I was voted into this position. I worked very hard on a referendum, but as anybody knows, before I got this seat, when the school started being marketed as a middle high school, I started asking the question. And when I got on this board, that was my first question. Why are we marketing this school middle high? I know what the ballot said. I know what the referendum ballot said and the petition. Before I was a board member, I never promoted it as a middle high. When I went to community, I was promoting a high school. I read the question. I read the petition. I am a database-driven policy maker. Now, I could have sat here and did a lot of political posturing. When it was initially presented, I asked for a delay. And what happened? I could have done the same thing today. That's politically posturing. I'm not going to do that. the time I serve on this board. I'll be wasting your time and my time. As I indicated, I was part of those meetings for the Distress Unit Appeals Board. I didn't make up my mind until the very second. My heart is racing, believe me. I looked at the data. I know what I voted for before I sat at this table. I asked the question. Everybody ignored it until it hit us in the face. So I've done my due diligence. And if anyone chooses to vote me off, it is fine with me, because I've done my due diligence. And I just want to reiterate, I am so proud of the teachers and the administrators that went to Indianapolis, because that's what it's all about. We have sat on our butts for so long and allowed these legislators to make a complete fool of urban, rural, and poor communities. Our teachers are underpaid, but I'll tell you one thing the Distress Unit Appeals Board told us, and I listened, and they asked the question, what more have you done other than this proposal? Did he not ask us that? And what was my response? We have tried. Carlotta King have tried on several occasions to suggest just what they suggested. Look at consultant contracts and other contracts and start renegotiating with these folks. They want our business. We could save millions of dollars just doing that. And I guarantee you that is something we will be doing moving forward. I've asked for that from day one, from the minute I sat on this seat. Let's renegotiate these contracts. And it fell on deaf ears. But I guarantee you it will not fall on deaf ears anymore. I'm going to do my due diligence as a board member. Am I proud voting yes? No. But I did what I thought was best for the residents and the children. Because our children, when we come out and let you know the academics, where we are now academically, that's another story altogether. Thank you.
Are there any other reports from any board members?
No.
I would like to report, yes, I also went down to the state, and it was myself, Trustee King, Superintendent Miller, Ms. Pritchard, and Mr. Matt Reese. We were before a 10-member panel. They wanted to know from A to B to C to D to E to F, head to toe, what were we doing in this district? And how is the district going to come out of financial straits? It hurts all of us. I'm a graduate of Gavitt. This has been no picnic for me. And anybody could form their opinion of me. Anybody could say that they don't like me because I've been bullied, intimidated, threatened, all kind of things. But what's important is what's the best for the children and what is best for the district. The state is not going to wait. The state is not going to listen, well, we can't do it now because we're going to hurt feelings and so on and so forth. No, we have to move forward. They wanted to know the answer.
Why'd you lie to us?
What upset me at the Clark meeting was too much stereotyping of the 3rd District. It was very insulting. There is nothing wrong with our children from Hammond High School. There is nothing wrong with the 3rd District. I have been in Hammond all my life. I remember when Calumet Avenue was a 2-lane highway. I remember when my father used to take me and ice skate at Maywood Park and there was a little warming hut. I remember when Mayor Boskowski first put in the pool. I remember when there was St. Anne's Home, where the Ophelia Steen Center is now standing. Our children get along with each other. It doesn't matter what race you are, what culture you are, your gender. And you know what? It's not it's not the kids, it's these parents. You need to stop the stereotyping. Kids are kids. They hang out, they get along. These parents need to lead by example. And this will pass. It takes a lot of healing, but Superintendent Miller is going to start planning, meeting with communities, meeting with everyone. It wasn't an easy decision, trust me. But the finger pointing could still be finger pointing and liar and this and that. You know what? Move forward. Let's move forward. Let's heal as a community. Let's be the solution to the problem and not the problem to the solution. Let's have other people of other communities look at us and let's shine. It's about the kids. It's not about me or anybody else. It's about these kids. And that's going to be a beautiful building over there. It's going to offer everything. And that building will stand 100 more years. I'll be dead, but it will still stand. So we have to work together. We have to embrace all kids, all cultures, all diversity, and all genders. And that's all I have to say.
Madam President, Madam President.
Yes, Trustee Miller.
I just, in listening to you talk, and I want to add, it is not an easy decision, and what lays before us is not easy. I am a lifelong Hammond resident. I am a graduate of Gavitt. I am a gladiator, and I've always made the joke, I'm the pride of Hammond, it's on the wall. It must be true, right? But that is true. Being a gladiator is part of who I am. It's not a place. It's not a neighborhood. It's who I am. So whether I'm a gladiator or I'm a pioneer or I'm a governor, that's who you are. It's not just a place, and that we'll bring those things with us as we come together.
Yes.
as a community.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of talk about family.
Yes.
You know, but Hammond is a family, and to be able to come together, and it's going to be work, not just for the superintendent, not just for the board, not just for the administration. It's going to be work for you too. We need the community to be involved in this and help us figure this out. And how do we do this as a family? Not just as a governor, not just as a pioneer, not just as a gladiator, but to take all of those great things that are inside of us and to bring that together and to bring that together in unity. And how do we do that? We need you to help us figure that out.
Yes, and I'm very confident with once the new high school is opened, there will be businesses coming into that district. And I would like to introduce he's going to be our newly elected council person that I know he's going to be working, and he still works with our schools. Future Mr. Barry Tyler. Welcome. So we're going to have a lot of good things happening. Any other reports? Okay. Item number 11, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Second. It's been moved, it's been second. Thank you for coming. Have a happy, blessed Thanksgiving.